All right, guys, so about the flea market, I redact a lot of what I said in my last video about basically tying in more progression to the flea market. I still don't necessarily think it would be a bad idea to have more progression associated with the flea market in terms of what you can buy and sell, because I think more progression in EFT is always kind of a good thing because it gives players something to do. But I've finally come to the conclusion after talking with like Slush Puppy, a bunch of friends, reading the forums and the Reddit, and watching some other YouTube videos from other creators that I respect to kind of shape a new opinion. And I have two examples of things as to what is really the core issue with the flea market, and that comes down to supply and demand. So I'm going to give you guys a quick example of 7N31 ammo. It's the new 9mm ammo, right? Everybody wants it. It's really fucking good. 7N31. So when you go and look at 7N31 on the Flea, right? I'm actually going to buy some from Prapper. Hey there, guy. So first of all, 7N31 sells out really quickly on the trader because it's really good ammo. You can buy a limited amount of it, and there's a global amount that eventually sells out within the first, couple minutes, 10-20 minutes of the trader reset. And then if we're looking at the next stack here, 23 rounds for 5,000 rubles a pop. Right? I'm just going to go and buy that because, fuck it, 100K, there you go, bro. You deserve it. And now the entire flea market no longer has 7N31. And the reason because of this is because 7N31, I think, is only found in ammo crates and Jaeger stashes, and it spawns in super, super low quantity, right? I think a lot of the issue with the flea market really comes down to supply and demand. So 7N31 is really rare in raid. You don't really find a lot of it. And because of that, it doesn't filter that much on the flea market. And I think 7N31 has like what, 39 penetration and like 55 damage or something like that. And now let's go check out M61, which is the best ammo in the game in my opinion. Look how much of this is on the flea market, and it's like a quarter of the price of what I just paid for that 7N31. It's 16. It never sells out from the trader. First of all, it's always there. There's an unlimited amount of it at the trader pretty much that never sells out, and there's a massive abundance of it for two reasons. One, you can find it in ammo stashes, you can find it in Jaeger stashes, you can craft it in the hideout, and scavs with R700 spawn with like fucking 80 rounds of this shit. And so the demand for M61 is much less because the supply is much higher than what people are wanting for it. In my opinion, I do not think you should be able to craft the best ammo in the game in your hideout unless that craft is like 8 to 12 hours. Like if we look at our hideout here, and you want to craft high tier items in your intelligence center, like really good stuff, like GPUs, Vertex programmable processors and stuff like that, it takes like 37 hours or sometimes even 2 days to craft that high value barter good. Whereas if you go look at, the workbench here, I can craft M61 ammo, or like even worse, 7N12 BP in 2 hours. Granted, yeah, like both of these cost like maybe 100K on the flea market to get both of the items. Or like 120 rounds of 762 BP just for one fucking gunpowder in 2 hours for some of the best ammo in the game. And because of that, it filters on the flea market incredibly fast. And I think with a lot of the flea market, it really comes down to a supply and demand. Like I said, with M61, the supply of M61 ammo is so much higher than that of the demand. So the price lowers, and there's basically an unlimited quantity of it for players to buy and run every single raid, which will then filter out through the rest of the game. If you're not running M61, you either just don't have enough money or you're just fucking stupid, right? But then we go back to 7N31, there is literally hardly any listings for it, and it's in very limited quantities. One person can come in and buy out all of this ammo. And look, it's already sold out at the trader too, which completely just basically removes it from the game for a period of time. And I think what basically needs to happen is BSG just needs to go back and they need to control exactly what players are getting, where they're getting it, and how much of they're getting. So let's look at Slick here. Slick has actually become a lot better, and the reason why Slicks are actually going up in price is because you have to find them in raid now. If Slicks were not found in raid anymore, if the find and raid change wasn't a thing on the flea market anymore, Slicks would be down to 200K, and we'd be seeing them literally every single raid, and we'd be back at the end of 12.0 patch with, if you're not running ammo with at least 58 pen, you're playing the game wrong and you're stupid. You should be bunny hopping and 80 strafing, you fucking idiot, right? This to me makes a lot of sense because the supply is quite low, but the demand is high. So therefore the price is up, and you have to pay that premium price to get a premium item. And that, to me, it makes a lot of sense. But now let's use kill armor, for example. Actually, it's, what is it? 6B tan. Where is it? Yeah, right here. 6B13. This is, in my opinion, better than Slick because it repairs better, and it covers your stomach, and it's lighter. and it's 280,000 rubles, which is half the price of Slick. It's really just not, this is way more cost effective than running a Slick. But because you can kill Killa pretty easily, he has the best armor in the game, there's 150 listings of it, so the supply is way higher than the demand of this item, so players can naturally just run this every single raid, even if they have the money. They can literally run Killa armor every single raid if they wanted to, because there is a ready supply of it from the scab boss, and he's really not that hard to kill. And just in terms of Killa armor, I think just making Killa way more difficult. I think him as a solo boss, he should be the hardest boss in the game, just because he's alone. You know, you have like all the other scab bosses with minions and stuff. I mean, for fuck's sake, like Senator and Gluhar have more HP than Killa, and they have like 6 other guys with them. And to me, like, I feel like Killa should just be way more dangerous than he is, just because he drops some of the best armor in the game, ammo and gun. And so I think with the flea market, more than anything, it just comes down to supply and demand. It's because the supply of items that are found in raid now, because we have the find and raid change, is much higher than that the demand of players needing it. Again, going back to M61 ammo and 7 and 31. 7 and 31 is almost like not really on the flea market, just because people buy it up and there's limited amounts of it, and you can only get so much of it from the trader. So that again helps filter like the overall global amount of that item circulating throughout the game. But when you have so many areas where players can get M61 ammo, scavs with R700s, you can craft it in the hideout, you can find it in containers, it basically creates a bad supply and demand, essentially. And so this basically allows players to run M61 ammo every raid if they want, if they can afford it. You know what I mean? And 1,700 rubles around for some of the best ammo in the game, in my opinion, is fucked up. That's fucked up. This is fucked up. It's fucked up. I mean, a lot of this really just comes down to supply and demand, where players are getting items, how much can they get, and what do they have to do to get the item. You know, there's a lot of things that are going to change with EFT within the next 6 months. Even with patch 12.8, there's a lot of new gameplay changes coming in. Nikita told me with the next wipe that's happening, either with 12.9 or 0.13. And basically that kind of depends on whether or not Streets and the armor system is ready for 0.13, because those are the two major features. There's going to be a lot of changes coming to the game. And with whenever the next wipe happens, that wipe, they're rebalancing the game. They're rebalancing weapon attachments, they're rebalancing ammo, they're rebalancing the economy. They're doing an entire gameplay rebalance of the Escape from Tarkov, essentially, and hopefully fixing a lot of these saturation issues and supply and demand issues that we have in the flea market, and, you know, all that other nonsense that we have to deal with pretty much every day. You know, one of the reasons why people feel like armor is basically useless or helmets are useless, that's really because ammo that's over 40 pen is readily in demand. The supply is high. You can fucking get it. Where, I mean, sorry, I fucking twisted my words up. The supply of ammo that has over 40 pen is just readily available. It's super easy to get any type of ammunition that has over 40 pen. You know, there's no limit on the supply of it. It's just readily abundant. And because of that, any armor that's under level 4 or 4 or less is just going to kind of feel not worth using, because most people that you're going to see are going to have ammo over 40 pen, inherently making the armor feel useless. And again, the reason why EFT is so special is because it's a very dynamic experience. You're never really able to predict what's going to happen each and every raid, but due to the way that the economy works in this game, you can. You know, you bring in level 5 and 6 armor, you bring in ammo that has over 50 pen, because you know, without a doubt, you're probably going to be seeing these guys in your raids. I will say, since the find and raid change has come to the flea market, it has actually helped the progression tremendously with EFT. It has controlled the amount of metagear, ammo, and armor that has kind of like filtered its way into the game, like by a lot. Like, I'm still having fun with this wipe, like even like 100 days into the wipe, because I'm not running into the same players every single raid. You know, I'm seeing a lot of diversity with the gear, and I think mainly that's because of the find and raid change with the flea market. And so to kind of tie everything up here, it really just comes down to supply and demand for the flea market, in my opinion. It comes down to what players are able to make in their hideout, what they're able to find on raid, and what they're able to get on their scavs. It's also one of the reasons why lab cards are really abundant on the flea market, is because the main supply for lab cards is not the trader, it's player scavs. You just go and use player scav, you have a really high chance to spawn with a lab card. Obviously killing bosses too, you know, they almost have them on them as well. But if it was up to me, I'd make it to where lab cards are only on scav bosses. They wouldn't be able to buy them from the trader. You wouldn't get them on your player scav. They would literally be only acquired off scav bosses. And that would be a big reason as to why players would want to hunt scav bosses, so they get that sweet lab card. I don't think the flea market should be removed. I think it'd be silly if they did, because BSG put like 4 or 5 months of dev time into programming this thing and all the backend that's associated with it. To say that we should just outright remove it, I think is just kind of wrong. Because the flea market, in my opinion, is kind of a neutral evil. It's done as much good as it has done bad to the game. And it's a very balanced evil, if you will. It's just as much good as it is bad, in my opinion. And so again, I think the flea market really just kind of comes down to what the supply is and what the demand is from the players. If the supply is much higher, you're always going to have an overabundance of really good ammo on the flea market. But when your supply is lower, 7 and 31 ammo, you're going to run into these situations where there is just a very limited amount of that item on the flea market. You're basically limiting inherently what is grossly available throughout the entire game because of where players are finding the item. If more ammo in the game acted like 7 and 31, where especially like the best ammo in the game, it sold out at the trader because it had a very limited quantity and it was very hard to find in raid and there was no craft for it in the hideout, that would help inherently control what players are able to buy, and also would control the dynamics of your in-raid experience. It would make your armor feel like it's more useful because not everybody would have good ammo. However, you could still run into that raid with somebody with good ammo because they had it. You know what I mean? It would never get rid of that experience. Because whenever EFT gets to the point where you're able to predict what's going to happen each and every raid, what players are going to have each and every raid, it ruins the game and in my opinion, diminishes the EFT experience, which is to be that completely unpredictable, dynamic experience. And I think that's something that needs to be understood among the entire community, is that you should never be able to predict everything. You should only try and prepare as best you can so that no matter what situation you run into, you're prepared well enough to be able to meet that situation no matter the odds. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Chat is also here. I did this live. So I'll see you guys on the next stream. And hopefully this creates a better understanding and hopefully creates some more discussions among you guys and makes your brain hamster, you know, run a little bit more on that little fucking wheel.